Hello, I'm Sybil Wilkes with What You Need to Know, and welcome today to the wonderful Keisha Lance Bottoms, White House Senior Advisor for Public Engagement. And welcome. It's so good to see you. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you as well.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, the White House is preparing for a very important trip. This is regarding President Biden's upcoming participation in the Selma Bridge Crossing, the commemorating Bloody Sunday, which took place March 7th, 1965. Last year, Vice President Harris attended the ceremonies there. This, if I'm not mistaken, is Mr. Biden's first trip to the Pettus Bridge as President of the United States. Is that correct?
His first trip as president, but not his first trip there. He visited as a senator and visited as vice president. So this is his first trip as president.
You know, with a lot of things that go on in our history, it's not hard to believe that this is not the president's first trip on all of these important events, such as the commemoration of Bloody Sunday. The president has a long history, obviously, in civil rights, but why is it, if you can talk about the importance of this trip and recognizing and remembering what happened 58 years ago?
Well, President Biden has said before, and you'll hear him say it again on Sunday, Sybil, our history matters and we can't erase our history. And if we do so, we do so at our own peril. That our history, of course, as we know, and it's even hard to believe that we're still having to have this conversation about the importance of history. But our history has shaped who we are, and it will shape who we will be in the future. And the president has used the power of his pen to try and make sure that he can do everything possible to strengthen civil rights in our country. He's called upon Congress to join him. Sybil, I know you've had the opportunity to go into the White House. If you were to walk in there today, as you go into the East Wing, there are pictures up of civil rights leaders meeting with President Lyndon Johnson, a picture of Whitney Young, a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. and other leaders gathered around meeting with Lyndon Johnson. They are up in the executive office building. So history matters to this administration. It matters to this president, and that's why he'll be there on Sunday.
And certainly, Madam Bottoms, we understand the importance of not only of civil rights, but the voting rights, which are really at a critical point in our country, and I dare say in a number of states, particularly in the South, in terms of voter rights being shaved away, being taken away by state legislatures and perhaps even by federal. But can you talk about the importance of really promoting voting rights and what this means to people whose names are on the bills, like John Lewis, and what we can do and to look forward to on Sunday?
Voting rights are important everywhere, but I'll just give Georgia as an example, my home state. When you have elections that are decided by the thinnest of margins, then it makes a difference if people show up to vote and they can't, or if they don't have time off from work to vote, or if they show up at a polling place and they have to wait 4 hours in line and all they have is their lunch break, or they have to get there before they have to pick their kids up from school. All of that matters, and it certainly can make a difference in very important elections. And this is why the president has called on Congress to sign this, to pass and sign this voting rights legislation, to do everything that can be done from the federal level to make sure that the right to vote is protected, because we can't always rely on states to get it right. And there were people who said, oh, you had so many people turn out to vote in Georgia, but think about the number of people who didn't turn out to vote in Georgia. There were a lot of people who didn't have the opportunity to show up and vote because it was difficult, or they didn't have time to wait in hours long lines. So when you look at things that are done and people think in and of themselves they don't make a difference, well, they do make a difference. When you're cutting down the number of Saturdays and Sundays that people can go and vote, when you are you look at what's happening in Florida, that you've seen the videos of armed police officers showing up at the homes of people who thought that their right to vote had been restored, and they're descending upon them as if they are mass murderers. All those things go to discourage people. And that's why it's important from the federal level that we have whatever protections possible to make sure that people exercise what John Lewis considered to be the sacred right to vote.
And get into some good trouble to restore those rights.
That's right. Good trouble. And he reminded us that if we did not exercise our right to vote, if we didn't protect it, that we could lose it. And there are people who say, oh, we'll never lose the right to vote. Well, there are many people
We already have.
And there are many people who thought women would never lose the right to have access to an abortion.
Exactly right.
And we saw that go away. So people have to remember democracies are fragile, and democracies don't exist by accident. They are intentional, and a cornerstone, a bedrock of democracies, making sure that everyone has access to the vote.
I know that this is in your backyard, as it were, going to Selma, Alabama, and I'm not sure if this is going to be your last official act as a part of your work with the White House. But I want to thank you for the great work you've done, and also in working with the Biden White House. And I'm very proud of you, and I hope that other people are expressing that as well. As one who has been a part of a fragile democracy, as you say, and now going on a citywide level, and now moving on as you are on a federal level, it's great to see representation there in this White House, and the importance of this event. And any last words you want to leave with our viewers and our listeners about the importance of recognizing Bloody Sunday, the anniversary of March 7th, 1965?
Well, thank you, Sybil. And I joined the White House, and I thought I would just stay through the midterm elections because we knew how important the midterms were. And I was honored to be asked by the president to stay much longer. And for me personally, it was a sacrifice. But it's also, it pales in comparison to the sacrifice that John Lewis and 600 other protesters made when they tried to cross that bridge on Bloody Sunday. A 25-year-old John Lewis, it's hard to be 25 years old, walked into what he knew could end his life, along with 600 other peaceful protesters. And for many, many believe it to have been a turning point in our country's history. And it's important that we remind people of that. And it's important that the president be there to remind people that voting rights, civil rights, human rights still matter in this country. So I will be honored to be there with him on Sunday, along with many other representatives of the administration and congressional leaders and local leaders. And the fight continues. And in the memory of John Lewis, Rosalind Pope, who we recently lost, who appealed for human rights when she was just a student at Spelman College, in the memory of so many others who sacrificed so much. I will be honored and to join the president on Sunday.
And we will join you wherever we are, and we will be saying their names, lifting their names up in praise, and also thanking you in the White House for your participation. Thank you so much, Keisha Lance Bottoms, for joining us today, and congratulations to you on all your good work. And thank you to the president as well.
Thank you, Sybil. Good to see you.
You too. I'm Sybil Wilkes, and that's what you need to know.